some other nonsense.
Are you
this podcast? Yeah.
Are you ready to get back in time?
Yes. Oh my God, that song, man. We need more of this type of song, you know. And they also, not the Snakes on a Plane song, you know. We need more of like Huey Lewis in the News type of.
I miss Huey Lewis, but he needs time to create. So.
Yeah, yeah. So.
That's a Family Guy joke.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just going along because you were laughing.
Yeah.
I mean, Family Guy's kind of funny, but I just have not seen. I don't know why animation is so hard for me to get into. It's like I'd rather watch anything else than cartoons with voices. It sounds so bad, but that's kind of true. You know, I just don't want to hear it, see it, watch it, and I can't empathize. I don't know what it is.
But you can empathize with what we're talking about today, which is one of the greatest movies of all time.
It is one of the greatest movies of all time. I thought we'd throw our audience a bone and actually talk about like a really good movie, like a really, really good movie. Paranorman was good. Snakes on the Plane. Yeah, we have this trajectory and kind of winding through really shitty movies to pretty good movies. So I was like, yeah, let's talk about a great one. So.
Yeah, it's been a while. I was kind of resistant. I mean, I didn't say no when you suggested this, but I was kind of just like,
you didn't say anything.
Is it too good? Can we talk?
Too good for this podcast?
Are we allowed to talk about things that we enjoy?
I think we are.
The answer is yes. You know, in some of the other episodes we have covered. I think this is the second legitimately good movie we've done. Nah, that's not true, because there was The Rock, and then since we started video, there's The Rock, Big Trouble in Little China, Back to the Future. I mean, okay, so
yeah. Eventually,
a pattern will emerge.
Yes, of like a really good movie every like year or two, and then back to the sludge. Yeah. No, I love this movie. I don't really have any criticisms to say about it. You know, it's
see you next week, folks. No.
yeah, stop it right now. No, it's one of those things, man. It's like one of those movies that's just a pleasure to watch, you know.
Well, let's start with this. When was the last time you watched it?
This morning.
Before this, with Mr. Wiseacre.
I showed it to my niece. She watched all of them. She was enthralled about 6 months ago. So
okay.
Yeah, they were all on Netflix. I was like, "Oh, have you seen this? This will blow your mind," and it did.
Yeah.
She was like, "Oh my God!" I was like, "And there's 2 more." Yeah. What? It's like, yeah, you want to watch them all? They're all pretty good. So the second one's my personal favorite, but and the third one, I don't know, it's pretty good. I still enjoy it, but doesn't seem to capture the same magic as the first 2 did for me.
I think it does, but I have a theory about that, and I think it has to do with when we grew up, because like my dad loves the third one, but we grew up on, you know, Star Wars and Spacemen, you know.
Yes.
And he grew up, you know, as a child of the 50s and 60s on cowboys and westerns. So I think it really felt like meaningful to him because it was his whole experience of going back, like with the first movie, going back and seeing, you know, kind of the era that he grew up in with some nostalgia goggles on. And then, you know, the second one, you got to see a little bit of the present day, but you got, you know, more of the dark times with it. And then with the third one, it's like, oh, now you get to be in the cowboy movie that all those kids grew up watching.
That makes sense. Like, and yeah, like that totally makes sense of like certain age groups would want or appreciate things better, you know? I would agree that it would probably sway me into liking it more. It's just, for me, it's also like a weird juxtaposition of having like futuristic tech in the past, you know? It just seems like it should be like kind of present or in the future, just because of how everything looked, you know. So it was weird when, I don't know, you just go back too far almost, where it was like, oh man, there's like no technology here, you know, no microchips,
Right.
nothing like that,
You
you
got
know.
Emmett Brown's steampunk ice cube
Right.
machine.
Yeah, exactly. One ice cube. It probably took weeks, you know,
Yeah.
and it came out yellow. So whatever that is, dirt, you know.
It was the water at the time. I think I mentioned
Yeah.
this on another one of our other episodes. It always used to blow my mind when you'd be watching a Western and someone had come into this saloon, the doors, hard day on the trail, spurred up to the counter, give me a whiskey. And it's like, even out in the sun all day, like, what do you mean you want a whiskey? Like,
Yeah.
but I realized that it's because the water was filthy back then, so that, like, the alcohol was basically
The only fluid you
self-cleaning.
could get.
No wonder their life
Oh
expectancy was
man.
so terrible. But enough about that. Let's talk about the
Right.
first one.
Yes.
So that
Yeah.
was the last time you saw it, was showing it to your niece.
About 6 months ago. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's been a couple years for me. I don't know when the last time I saw it was. I think I always just kind of put it off because I've seen it so many times. But then
Yeah.
when you are watching it, it's like, man, this is great.
It is. It is like the chemistry between like Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd is just is amazing. I don't think this could be redone with different people. Like this type of like back and forth that they have, and that the humor that I like in this is not like the over the top slapstick stuff. You know, it's like the subtle stuff, like in Ghostbusters, like, hey, listen, smell something. You know, like stuff like that. When Doc Brown says like 1.21 gigawatts, or no, he says a bolt of lightning. Twice the exact same way.
In a bolt of lightning. In a bolt of lightning.
Yeah, is really funny to me, you know, because it's like no one would say it like that. It'd say a bolt of lightning, and then it would have it would be said differently, you know, the second time. So it's really funny where it's like Michael J. Fox just hit the rewind button to get the exact same answer, you know. So stuff like that I love. And then the music in this, just great. I noticed myself humming along to the theme song for the rest of the day until this podcast started, you know? So great. There's a lot of stuff to love in it, you know?
Yeah. That's the power of love. Just
yeah.
Just to bring it back to the music there. That is really like woven into the DNA of the movie.
Yeah. Because I feel like it's the like third main character is the music.
It is the theme song, you know it is.
Yeah.
I mean, because you've got the score theme song that everybody, the dun 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 dun, and then the Power of Love is like the unofficial theme song. But I guess I always forget about like how woven into the rest of the music it is, because like even when Marty's doing his band performance in the beginning, like the first 10 minutes of the movie is the Power of Love, because he wakes up to that's on his alarm clock.
Yeah.
And then you hear it when he's skating across town, going to school. Then when he's at the Battle of the Bands audition, they're playing kind of a light version of that before it gets back to You're Too Loud.
Yeah. No, it's everywhere. They're like, we've got this one awesome song. We need to highlight it as much as we can in this movie, you know? But I don't know. I like the song, but it's so fucking corny. I like the song because it's part of Back to the Future, but it is such a corny song, you know? Like, he's got some other bangers in there. Huey Lewis does. Yeah. So.
But that was okay in the 80s, though. Like, it was fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, like, I don't know. And also another thing, I love that this movie still stands the test of time. Some movies get a little, I don't know, you appreciate them a little less as you go. Like some movies that I really loved when I was a kid, I watch now and I'm like, oh, that's just okay. Not quite like what I remembered it, but this is like, you know, however many years later, and it's still like able to like put my niece in a trance for 2 hours, you
Hmm.
know. So
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah, I was one thing that I really noticed watching it this time was the age makeups. And I think it's just because this is the first time I've really been able to see it in super high definition on my massive, theater screen. And I kept noticing the makeup. Like
I'm
just
like Doc Brown.
I well, just on everybody, like not just the age makeup, but the beauty makeup as well. So I'll get back to that in a second.
Okay.
But yeah, Doc Brown had it. Crispin Glover had it. Biff, I forget the gentleman's name. Biff Tannen had it in the beginning, and like you could see, like it was good. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just like these are the
You can
kind of things that
yeah.
you watch a movie on VHS and they just blow right by you. Even on DVD, you watch it and you might not see it, but like when you're watching it on Blu-ray or 4K on a good TV, you really start to see those granular details, and it makes me wish I paid more attention to that kind of thing, or even knew what to look for when we saw a lot of these movies in the theater. Because I remember liking the movies as a kid, but they were just kind of bigger, and you got to see it in a dark room. I don't think I really appreciated like the sharpness of it, and that's the kind of thing that like you would absolutely see that you wouldn't see when it came out on home video. And it would really, really make you like just appreciate that theater experience so much more back then, because that was your 4K, and that was the
Right.
only place you could get it. It was right there in that
Well,
movie theater.
yeah, I mean, like for a lot of these movies, like I don't think I saw this in the theater, or anything. So it's like the only option we have to watch it is like a really shitty version of it for such a long time,
Hmm.
from like VHS to DVD, which was probably pretty good. Obviously, we all enjoyed it at the time.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, now seeing it in the definition that you could see it in because of a movie theater is like an impressive experience. And it's like, man, you just realize like how much time and energy went into like just about everything, to make it look great.
Hmm.
It's different. I don't know, like it's just interesting because like you're missing so much of like the experience, not seeing how it was meant to be seen, you know.
Yeah.
And I love that we can actually now go back and see these things for what they are. I keep going back to like the thing because it's like almost every iteration, it was like, I don't think I've seen this movie. I don't think I've seen like everything in this movie,
Hmm.
because of the massive jump from VHS to Blu-ray or DVD, and then DVD to Blu-ray. I was like, man, I don't know if they can do it better. Like this looks great for an old movie.
Hmm.
JK. Like when they went to 4K, I was like, Jesus, this is nuts.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, at this point, the only way you can tell that it's from the 80s is from what people are wearing, you know. I don't think I've seen that good of quality in like a 4K transfer from that old movie. The only one that I think is on the same level is the Alien 4K, you know, that there's not fuzz or graininess or anything, in either one of them. I'm like, how is that possible?
Hmm.
Like how do you not have grain? And it just comes down to like what type of film stock they were using at the time, and if it
Yeah.
could handle low light conditions. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because like Aliens is because I watched Alien and Aliens back to back the one day there, and Alien looked great, and Aliens is amazing. But like, man, this is a noisy looking movie. I don't want to dwell on that more, but it's just more what you're saying, where like there's certain textures that you can only notice on these higher formats that you really couldn't.
yep. Yeah.
And sometimes it's for better, and sometimes for ill.
It, yeah.
Um, you know what else blew my mind was because I was watching the credits, listening to the music, and then you see all the song titles go up, and then it's presented in stereo in select theaters, and I was like,
stereo, not in all theaters.
The idea, like, as I'm sitting here watching this in 4K in my home movie theater, 8 feet tall, with my 7.1 surround system, the idea that stereo was a premium sound format, right? Where like your IMAX of the day, where it's like, oh man, I'm going to that Dolby
right
Atmos theater because they're the ones that have the stereo presentation of Back to the Future.
Yeah.
That really threw me for a loop. I'm not sure how to process that one, but
yeah. Come to our theater because our theaters are shown with stereo,
mm-hmm.
Like I can just imagine that would be a graphic design element to get ticket sales, like that's wild to me, that it was so primitive that back then, like what we have now is like so far advanced from like what it was some 30 years ago. That's
mm-hmm.
awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But then it's like, man, you just think of like all the stupid shit you had to go through to watch a movie before on VHS, like the pan and scan shit. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just dealt with it because you had to.
Yeah.
I wonder how many people just was like, oh, why isn't there movement? Why isn't the camera moving around weirdly anymore? It's like, oh, because the whole image is shown, They're not like panning over a super widescreen image to show you what else is happening.
Mm-hmm.
So pan and scan. Oh man. We suffered through that for a long time. Long time.
Yeah. So to circle back to the makeup real quick. I noticed that because I'm sure most people know the story of Michael J. Fox working 2 jobs for not the whole film, but especially during the beginning. Like he was on Family Ties and like during the day and then doing this at nighttime. And so I was kind of looking to see like the bags under his eyes and like the cover up makeup and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which you can definitely see, especially in those early nighttime scenes where they're at the mall there with the Libyans, but then I started noticing that everybody kind of had like this uniform kind of beauty makeup on, and it made me wonder if that was a choice that they did so that they could color correct the entire movie easier.
Oh,
because everybody has vastly different skin tones when you really look at it, and I would love to know. That's probably the thinking there is like, let's bring everybody to a kind of baseline skin tone so that when we do adjust the color, it doesn't, make the redhead look strange because she's a lot more pale than this other person.
Oh man. Yeah, I mean that's a really good point. They probably did. That was probably accounting for something,
Yeah.
Then. Because I mean, I would imagine that there's benefits of doing color correction now where you don't have to jump through as many hoops, or at least different hoops,
Yeah,
then compared to now.
They're still there. It's just
so yeah. But like I wonder, like, have you noticed the makeup in a lot of movies? Like not special effects makeup, but like just like facial makeup, skin tone makeup. Now a lot of other times.
Yeah, I'm gonna start paying more attention to it now that it's something that's in my mind.
Okay.
There was a point there where I was looking at it because I was doing a lot of monster makeup in movies, and I felt like I needed to know a little bit about beauty makeup because it actually made my monster makeup better because of the colors and the blending. But yeah, no, that's something I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to. But the other thing that jumped out at me that I don't think I ever noticed before was when the car got crashed and and Crispin Glover's talking to Biff like right when Marty comes home, and you kind of see like it's sort of the reverse thing, right? Where it's like the slacker son is disappointed in his father instead of the other way around.
Yeah.
Uh, there was such a great little set Biff up as just a piece of crap character that he is. I mean, it wasn't just that he was bullying him into like, hey, you're gonna do this. Hey, don't do that in your handwriting. Don't make it too obvious. But
Right.
when he was like complaining about the now, Biff, who's gonna pay for this car? Who's gonna pay for this? I spilled beer on this when they like, oh my god, tell me you were drunk driving without telling me you were drunk driving.
Right. Right. No, like the way that they set him up and some of the other characters as like, oh, I don't know, there's like no sympathy you could have for someone like Biff, you know?
No.
And they so quickly established that in like record time where you're like, oh, this guy's like the worst. He is an awful person, you know? And they just do it with that car crash sequence where it's getting pulled, the car's being pulled in the driveway, and you already know it's like Marty's annoyed because the conversation that was just placed like 30 seconds before, like, yeah, we're gonna go away for the weekend, and oh, just kidding. Like Biff destroyed the car, and then it'd be instead of showing you like how nice of a person Biff is and how apologetic he could be, it's like, no, we're gonna crank it up a little bit more so you completely understand this guy's a jackass, you know?
And you go back and see that he was always a jackass.
Yes.
This wasn't a nature versus nurture situation. I don't think Biff was ever a good person. Like,
no,
even childhood Biff was probably up to some no good.
Right. And I love how like the future movies, like Griff in Back to the Future 2, is just more nightmarish than his grandpa, you know? So it's awesome to see all of it. And the other thing that I also like about this movie is that it sets up like little inside jokes for itself. Usually you'll get like a movie that references something else in a funny way, but this movie references itself throughout the whole movie, which I find great. So like the Lone Pine to Twin Pines thing.
Yep.
That's awesome because it's like you see that he's at the Twin Pines Mall in the very beginning before he goes to the past, and then he runs over one of those pines. So the next time you see the mall at the very end of the movie, it's the Lone Pine Mall. You know,
yeah,
that's awesome.
That's change, like, little subtle change to the future there.
Yeah. So how much of besides his parents, how much of the future do you think Marty changed from this? Because it was the mayor.
Oh God, I mean,
Marty put that idea into that guy's head, like, you're gonna be mayor, you know?
Well, yeah. I just feel like the whole universe would have collapsed in on itself just from the cascading effects of those people being different, because like, not only did they change, but then it's like every person's lives that they touched were completely different. The father's an author now. He knows a completely different set of people. There's people who never even would have met just because, he didn't work with them, or they didn't get invited to the Christmas party because he never worked there because he never had that job. Biff never rose to prominence at whatever company. I don't know that he is prominent, other than he's probably just sounds like the supervisor or the dad in the beginning there. Or maybe he isn't. I don't know, but it's just on and on and on. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like this. Well, it is a cascading effect. So like, yeah, how could you actually figure out like the massive amount of changes from that like one episode, right? And then or not episode, that one moment. But like, I have a question about this, and it's about time traveling. Okay, so if you go back in time, you change something from the past, and then the outcome is different, like what we saw in this movie, So like his parents are completely different. They're successful. They support each other, right? Like everyone in the family is not some like degenerate.
Yeah, the jailbird Joey never went to prison.
Right. So if you change that, and then like what Marty did, he sees his family. Would he have dual memories or no? Like, would he have memories of what it was like before this change in the past that had ramifications in the future? And like, would he have that where it was like this family is not in a good spot? And then would he also have the memories of like his parents being successful?
Well, I think this Marty would, but it begs the question of, is this the same Marty that, like, does that timeline have its own Marty? Because now that he's gone back and changed things and then come back to the future, is that the same person, or is that Marty number two in the same universe?
Right.
Because they had a Marty. What happened to him? Because those circumstances never happened that he went back in time. Unless, I feel like I should have rewatched that explanation that Hulk gives in Endgame where he's explaining this. Because
Right.
I thought they actually did a decent job with it, although maybe it doesn't make sense when you start pulling the threads. I don't think time travel makes sense when you start. I think all it becomes
there's so many problems with time travel. We think it's this great thing, but it's a nightmare. There's the whole free will and time travel. Can those two coexist?
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't think that they can. I think we've talked about that in a different episode. And then the problem with time travel also is like, is it the same person or have you just created a parallel universe? Like, because if any one thing happened while you're time traveling, something to do in the past is like, what if Marty didn't get the DeLorean to when it struck the lightning? Is that where the story ends?
Yeah,
It's
like the car didn't start when he was
right. Yeah, so there would be like a Marty that was successful and a Marty that wasn't. Like Marty could go back in time now and fuck up his journey to the future, back to the future,
Well, I think I like how they play with that in the second one.
Oh yeah, that's the reason why I like the second one. That like back
just
and
layers
forth
on layers of how many times
it's so cool.
It could have failed, and now they have to keep it going forward. Yeah,
right. Part of me thinks that there's a second universe that's created, but then if you apply that with anything, like, and chance, everyone's life could be radically different because it just can keep branching infinitely off any one thing, like, I don't know. I think of anything. It's like, well, that could have happened differently in the future had, well, this is like the butterfly effect. That's what I'm talking about, know? So butterfly flaps its wing across the ocean and suddenly a tsunami ends up hitting Japan, So, but
where did that analogy come from? Do you have any idea?
The butterfly effect?
I know it's a thing, but like that's not what actually happens. Like a butterfly can't cause a tsunami.
No,
it's just a ridiculous hypothetical.
Right. No, but it's just to illustrate that like one thing can lead into the next, and that thing changes that outcome. Like,
okay.
So it similar to like the domino effect, kind of. It's the same type of thing, kind of. Or not really. I don't know. They feel similar to me, but then it's like if you start like breaking things down, they are different. Anyways,
yeah.
Is that confusing anyone?
No. Well, yeah. I don't think time travel can exist without the concept of the multiverse also existing.
I agree.
And I agree. You just can't ever get back to your own time.
Yeah, I think like I don't think you could change the past at all. Like, I mean, you could, but that's not going to like.
Now it creates a new past.
Yes, that's exactly what I mean. Yeah, it's not the new past for everyone. It's just a different universe.
Mm-hmm.
This is starting to hurt my brain a little, thinking about time traveling and multiverses and whatever.
Let's change the subject then. There's so many classic lines in this, like
there are.
like when Doc Brown's like, oh, you have to forgive me, I didn't have time to paint it or build it to scale. He's talking
Yes.
about his amazing milk carton model of the city.
Yes.
Oh, you just did this in an afternoon, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Just in the afternoon. Yeah. When he asks Michael J. Fox, maybe, or tells him maybe he was adopted after he sees his dad in the hallway, you know, like you couldn't have come from someone like that.
He's got so many priceless reactions to just the whole future situation too, like where he's marveling over the camcorder.
Yes.
When he tells him about the plutonium for the first time, it's like, oh, I'm sure in 1984 you can just find plutonium in any corner drugstore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or even when he's talking about it, like, of course, from the fallout of all the nuclear wars. Like,
right. Yeah. Yeah. Everyone's dressed up in suits. The Ronald Reagan, the actor, you know.
That's an appropriate response.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that like I always never figured out though. I do like the one-liners. We can come back to, or the lines. We can come back to that in a minute. So one thing that is never explained, at least I never caught it, is how Doc Brown's mansion exploded. Like, because in the beginning, his like his laboratory is his garage, and they're like scrolling through the newspapers.
Yeah,
and it was like Brown Mansion explosion was
burns
like one of them. It's just
something.
rubble, you know. And I wanted them to tackle that. Like maybe he built his first flux capacitor, like the high or the mock-up, if you will, to test it out, and it like blew up, you know, or sucked his whole like house away, and that was just a cover-up article. Like we don't know what happened. There's just like smoke everywhere, and his house is gone. It must have exploded, you know. It's never tackled, and I really wish that they would have tackled that in any one of the movies, you know.
I mean, maybe you just presume that it's because of one of his experiments gone awry, because they do kind of touch on that aspect elsewhere of like how things can go wrong. Where is the second one that has the article where he's been committed?
Yes,
because something happens, and then it's like, oh, we can't let this happen because then I can't help you, you know.
Right. Yeah. Well, there was like that, the building of the clock in the third one, you know, how he died because they found his tombstone, you know.
Yeah.
They do wrap up a lot of stuff, but just not the house explosion, you know. Bummer. Missed opportunity. That could have been some like very funny, like comedic timing, you know. So just sparks everywhere.
That's part of that opening shot, isn't it? With all the clocks.
With all the clocks, yeah, and the kind of like it kind of tells you what's going to happen in the movie, because there's like a guy hanging from like a clock. It's like a painting of a guy hanging from like a clock arm on a really big clock, you know. But yeah,
that's a great detail. So, see, I was just mystified by, you know, the camera shot, because it just keeps going on, and then you see like the cans of dog food piling up and everything else. Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting plot thread there. I wouldn't call it a hole, just because I'm sure someone has a smart answer. If you do, put it in those comments.
Right.
I'd like to know that one.
Below. I want to talk about Eric Stoltz, though. You can't not talk about Back to the Future without not talking about Eric Stoltz, you know?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
it's how he was almost...
Yeah, he was almost Marty. I mean, he was Marty McFly, and then they fired him, you know?
What did they fire him for? Do you remember?
Well, he had like no comedy in him whatsoever. He was not funny, like no funny. And they wanted like someone lighthearted to play the role, and they thought he could do it, but he was just taking this like very seriously, this role, like not like he was putting a lot of effort in. Like the character had like a serious tone to him. And he viewed the movie, instead of being like a science fiction comedy, he viewed it as a tragedy, right? Which, like, the reason why he said it was a tragedy, your eyes got really wide there. Viewed as a tragedy was that he felt like by the time Marty McFly got back to 1985 at the very end of the movie, and he witnesses his family being completely different than the beginning of the movie because of the changes in the past, that Marty was a outsider to his family because his experience of his family is different than what they all are now. So he has like conflicting viewpoints of who his parents are and where they came from and what they were like to him. So he says it's a tragedy because he never experienced life with that family, you know?
Okay.
Doesn't that sound very serious?
It sounds
Like,
like a different movie.
yes, yes.
I can see that though. I don't know if, man, that's heavy. I don't know if that's the first thing that would occur to him when he got back, other than just the relief of being back. Because
Yeah, and seeing his family again. Yeah.
yeah, because I think the thing that makes it work and makes Michael J. Fox such a great character in this is how straight he plays it. Because he's not necessarily aping things for laugh. You got a lot of the
Right.
oh geez, oh yeah, oh gee, very put upon. But he's reacting honestly to the situation. So I could see that, you know, another actor doing the same thing and it working. But I mean, I guess if that's the way you're coming at it, then wow, that's
But
good.
like with how serious it was, I mean, this is why they ended up firing him because of how seriously he was taking it, makes other things later on in the movie have much more weight, right? So it's like now if you're talking about the scene where Biff is trying to assault uh what's her name? Lorraine?
Hmm.
His mom's name? And that suddenly seems like a little less comfortable to understand, right? Because now it's like you're playing this up with a very serious character or rendition of Marty McFly. So now when you get to scenes like that, it just seems like that's going to be much more serious. The tone has shifted, right? What Biff's doing is horrible,
Yeah,
but the perception is a little bit more stomachable because the main character is more lighthearted, right?
I guess I actually felt that like everybody was in serious jeopardy there, and I think that really worked to the movie's credit. Because like the Billy Zane is one of the thugs comes in, and then you got the guy
Yeah.
with the 3D glasses is the other guy. They
Yeah.
pick him up and they're hauling him away, and when George steps in, thinking it's going to be Marty, I mean, like, yeah, you're already feeling like really bad. I mean, I was feeling like really bad for those characters, and then he steps into it and it's like, oh no, it's for real, it's not for, nobody's playing around here. And then Biff even just has him the arm behind his back and everything, and it's like all of that feels so real, where it's just like, and anybody who's dealt with an actual bully and gotten some physical altercation over their head like that, I don't know, I felt like everybody was in very very serious jeopardy as it was.
Right. I feel the same way, but imagine now taking that whole sequence on with someone who's like much more darker and serious, like
Hmm.
it just went like, because I agree with you 100% with everything you just said. And it is terrifying and it's wrong. And what's about to happen is very tense, but even like bringing that down even further, I think wouldn't be good, you know? It would be very difficult to watch,
Yeah.
So
Well, and it's fascinating to think too, like just how different Eric Stoltz must have been in the role, because if that's what we're hanging our hat on when he gets back to the future, he hasn't grown up with that family. I accept that. I'm sure that's something that
Sure.
would cross Marty's mind one night at the bar where like, hey, wait a minute, Doc. Like what
Yeah.
But the fact that they were like 2 days into this and then they they fired him. Because that's at the end of the movie. So it really makes me wonder, like, wow, like what else must he have been doing for somebody to be like, hold on, time out. We don't really want to
Oh,
continue down this road.
oh, a lot. He did a lot. Not, it wasn't just lack of chemistry on the set. He was like a method actor, right?
Oh, no.
And yeah, one of those people. We like those method actors over here at the Post Credits Podcast. He would only answer anyone if he was called Marty instead of Eric. And then since he was a method actor, it has not been until this movie that I realized why I don't like method acting, right? And it feels like it gives people carte blanche to be a dickhead to other people, right? Like, oh, I'm just method acting and the guy's an asshole, so I'm going to be an asshole to you, you know? So there was some sort of altercation that was supposed to be filmed for this movie between Biff and Marty, played by Eric. And instead of like Eric pulling his punches, he didn't and was really shoving Biff around and all that stuff. And it got like pretty serious to the point where it was like, okay, enough's enough. Um, the cast and crew said upon his firing, well, that's good news.
Wow.
Like that is kind of saying something about like the cast and crew is like, oh, thank God our actor is leaving, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, it's just I think I understand the value of method acting as an exercise for a performer in a very limited capacity. You know, okay, for one day try to feel like you live in the shoes of that person. But here's my problem with it from a production standpoint. You know, there's so many things that you can't prepare for as an act. Like, okay, this is a time travel movie. Okay, so how do you fucking prepare for that? You can't.
right,
So your method
right.
acting gone out the window. Ridiculous. It stuff like that you said, where you're kind of imposing on other people. That's not cool.
Right.
You know, it's not just the shoving around. It's that, you know, there's a lot of people working on this thing to facilitate putting this shot on screen. And if something that you're doing is not only inconveniencing the other performers, it's hurting the movie, it's slowing production down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if the movie turns out like garbage, but you stayed in character the whole time, what did that prove? Nothing.
Right. Right.
So it's just
Not a damn thing.
it's method acting's dumb. Don't do it. Just
You heard it here, folks. Method acting is dumb. And I second that statement. I really do. I can't stand them. The method actors.
moving on.
Yeah. Yeah, so you got fired. And I had heard about this story for quite some time, and it's really easy to find photos of Eric Stoltz playing Marty McFly.
Mm-hmm.
But I was actually surprised at how much he was in the movie before they were like, oh, we need to recast. And like this was a $19 million budget by the end of it, but $4 million of that went to reshoots. So just about 25% of it,
Wow.
you know,
Pretty significant. Yeah.
it was significant. And Eric Stoltz knew he was on the way out when a specific day that was at Twin Pines Mall before he went back in time. They started requesting only Christopher Lloyd to record his lines and to be in the shot. And we're like, uh-oh. You know, I'm here too. What do you want me to do? Nothing. We're just going to be filming Christopher Lloyd today. Yikes. That's when I know I would be fired from any job.
But I have to say my lines. I'm method acting.
Yes. Yeah. No, you're not, Marty. You're not method acting anymore.
Oh, well, that's
Can we call you Eric now? Can we call you Eric now that you're fired?
Yeah. At what point do you switch that off? Now, I think we've picked on him enough there. You know, it's actually a little more off-putting just knowing what a nice guy in real life. I'm blanking on his name. The guy who plays Biff Tannen is a super nice guy in reality.
He is. Yeah.
And just knowing that, like, you know, you're having this scene and, you know, this guy's like doing, like, it's like,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He is a really nice guy. Wilson, something Wilson is his name.
Is it Tom Wilson? No.
Yeah, Tom Wilson.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
we'll have to fact check that. We can do that in real time now on the video version.
Yes, right now. Right now. You want me to? I can.
No.
I'll do it.
No, don't. I can just have it pop up on the screen if it's not right. If it's not right.
He had his own podcast. I think it's still going. Like, I've listened to it quite a few times. It's like, he's a good person. So yeah, it does suck where he's like getting pushed around by this serious method actor for a sci-fi comedy from the 80s, you know?
Yeah.
Like, this movie could not get made for whatever reason. And like, they took it to like 40 Zemeckis and Bob Gale. And I think even Kathleen Kennedy was involved. Like, she was a producer, but I don't know if she was involved in like the very early stages. But they kept trying to get it greenlit. And it took like 40 studios or 40 like rejections before they finally landed on like one that would work, or like a company that wanted to do it. And it came about because Romancing the Stone did so well, you know, which is another Zemeckis movie, you know.
Okay.
And the note that they kept getting back, though, was like what I found interesting. And they rejected it because it wasn't raunchy enough for they needed to spice up the sex appeal, I guess, for this movie, which I find really interesting. And that's why it kept getting rejected. But it's like, this movie, part of some of the jokes is because Michael J. Fox is trying to avoid incest, you know? So it's like, when they're talking about like, oh, we need to like sex it up a little bit, it's like, well, where would they put that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you can do that with this movie, you know?
Yeah.
The way that it is written. So
I guess I could see the logic in that, in that like R-rated comedies were like big at the time with like Animal House. I don't know if Revenge of the Nerds was out at that point in time, but it was definitely around that era where it's like, if it's a comedy, it has to be raunchy. So I guess I could see that. And the person reading it not making that connection, because I know for the longest time, it didn't occur to me that like, oh, that's the mom's after the son. Like, that's...
Yeah.
But then again, I was seeing it as a kid, and you just don't make those connections because you don't have any level of sexual awareness about anything.
Right. No, as a kid, you don't at all. You're so oblivious to all that stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, case in point, like Freddy's Revenge, you know, like, I don't think anyone, like, when we were growing up, I don't think like we realized like some of the stuff that was in it, like
the subtext.
Yeah.
There is something interesting about this though that jumped out at me this time, and again, it's because I don't watch the movie all that often, and I'm glad that I can still see something I've seen 100 times and kind of like pick up on little different things. Was how Lorraine says about she doesn't like Jennifer because she's girls chasing after boys. I never did that. And she totally did that. Because she was chasing after him.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Or maybe she only did it because of that. I don't know. But either way, I just thought that was amusing, where it's like, that version never did that, but then this other one did. So, maybe it's just the whole things getting
Right.
changed up. But there was another thing that jumped out too, where it's like they wouldn't let him be on band, play at the school dance because he was too loud.
Right.
And he was too loud even when he went back. But, he wound up getting to do the thing that they wouldn't let him do in his own time, which is play the school band. I thought that was really cool.
No, that is like, I love that too. One of the things that you brought up was like the mom having like the crush, right? I want to go deeper into that. Do you find it weird that she doesn't recognize him? Like when they see Marty back in the alternate 1985, because like her recollection is like the first time she met Calvin Klein was when he was almost wearing the exact same thing when he went to 1955. So that was like someone she went after. She would obviously remember like her dad brought the kid in and they were like, they had dinner with him.
Yeah.
But the next time, or not the next time she sees him, but he's wearing like the exact same outfit. Like, I just think
in
like,
the future she would have that.
She would be like, oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. That's a good point.
Yeah.
It's not a bad question, Bert.
Yeah, I just wanted to explore that because it's like, yeah, that would be really awkward. Because until that moment where she sees her son, it would just be a memory from the past, And then you'd be like, wait a minute. It'd be like a double take thing.
I guess that depends on like how crystallized in her memory that is, because I'm trying to think back right now, like, do I remember what any of my girlfriends were wearing the first time I met them? No.
Well, I don't think it. See, I don't think like
I might recognize their face,
right?
But
like
the clothes, I don't know.
I don't think we would recognize like it. Or okay, let me rephrase that. I don't think just by recalling a memory that we would be able to. Oh, like I remember like what they were wearing, how they looked, what they said to me. I don't think we'd be able to remember that. But I think if you have like a huge visual aid, like Michael J. Fox in this, wearing the same thing, I think like that would be more forceful to remember, to have like a memory triggered,
Sure.
It's possible.
Yeah.
So anyways, I would have liked
It's one of those great
like,
unanswered questions, just like
right.
Marty realizing he never grew up with his family.
Right. The other thing that I really like is that this movie is now in the library, or the United States Library of Congress, as like, we need to preserve this movie because of how damn good it is.
What is the term that they use? That they're historically and or culturally significant, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's like the criteria.
Join some other good movies there, like Night of the Living Dead.
Yes. It's just it's really cool to me that part of the government has said like, this movie is that important that if everything were to burn down, we'd still have a record of this movie. That's what I think is amazing.
I don't think you can end on a better note than that. I mean, what am I going to say that's gonna top that? Wow. Yeah. Back to the Future. What a great movie, man.
It's fantastic.
It's a joy every time I revisit it, and it is one that I try not to watch super often, just so I don't ruin it for myself any more than I already have.
You know what I'll say to that? I think when you see it with like a new generation of people and they get it, they get the jokes, they are excited about the same things. It's like, it's very refreshing to see it through a new lens, like, oh, this just isn't nostalgia. This is something bigger than that,
Mm-hmm.
So it's really cool to see that. So yeah, show it to your niece and nephew if you haven't already. Watch their mind melt.
It's your kids. You got to show it to your kids. Or they're going to turn out like assholes or something.
Yeah. Well, it's been fun. I have enjoyed talking about this movie. find us on social media at Post Credits Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. Those links are down below if you're watching on YouTube, or in the audio description.
That's right.
that too. So catch you in the next one.